Do you look at plans like great leaders do? You probably have a lot of different plans in your life. Whether you've written them down or not, you have plans which you use to achieve different things. You probably take the same route to work every day. That's an example of a very simple plan. You don't just get in your car and start turning left or right at intersections with the hopes of arriving at your workplace. Long ago, you discovered the best way to get to work in the shortest amount of time or the most scenic route. You unconsciously developed a game plan for traveling to and from work. Maybe you write to-do lists. These are simple little plans, but they can help you accomplish a lot. You plan when to drop the kids off at school, when to swing by the dry cleaner, and when to cook dinner. Suffice it to say that you're a planner in many different ways. While we're on the topic, do you look at plans like great leaders do? Dwight D. Eisenhower was once asked if he agreed with the theory that few plans ever survive first contact with the enemy. This is what he had to say. Plans are worthless. Planning is everything. Can those two sentences exist together? Aren't plans and planning the same thing? They are, and they aren't. Dwight David Ike Eisenhower was the 34th President of the United States. He held office from 1953 through 1961. He served as the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe during World War II. He reached the rank of 5-star General of the U.S. Army. Only 5 men have ever achieved that rank. Eisenhower was a leader of men and a successful politician. After his first term as President of the United States, he was re-elected to that position. He didn't get re-elected because he believed in plans, but rather because he knew that planning was crucial. The difference between planning and plans. Planning is essential unless you just want to bet on good fortune. Maybe the world will give you what you want, maybe it won't. Hoping on luck to create a great life for you is just hoping you'll hit the proverbial lottery. Smart planning eventually means you'll have a game plan of some kind. That's important. However, many of the plans you'll make won't take you to the results you're looking for. According to Eisenhower, this is when you begin planning again. Planning is important, but don't fall in love with a specific plan if it isn't working. You need to be able to pivot and change your approach from time to time. You should definitely be planning for a wonderful life. If not, you may or may not get there. Sometimes you'll develop a plan and discover it's not going to work out. Don't worry, just start planning again and come up with a new approach. Great leaders embrace failure. You should too. If you hate failing, that's a good thing. It means you're driven. People that aren't fazed by failure or loss don't expect much of themselves. You're different. You're like most folks because failure is frustrating to you. You can begin to question yourself when you get something wrong. You wonder if you're capable of achieving what's important to you. Even small failures can lead to an I quit attitude. Have several small setbacks in a row, and you might feel like giving up on making an effort at all. That's not what great leaders do. They embrace failure. That's definitely the case for a man who was defeated in a run for state legislature in the United States. He failed in business several times. Shortly after one such failure, the love of his life died. This led to a nervous breakdown the following year. He got back on his feet mentally, only to be defeated in his run for Speaker of the House 2 years later. Then he was defeated for nomination into Congress. He was eventually re-elected to Congress, only to lose renomination 2 years later. He was rejected in his bid as a land officer and then defeated in his attempt to become a U.S. Senator. A couple of years after that, defeat would once again come calling as he lost the nomination of vice president for his party in 1858. His failures were so legendary, they were given a name. You could easily forgive such a man if he gave up. That's a staggering list of failures. It would be easy to believe the world was just against you if this had been your experience. The man's lack of success was so legendary, it was given its own name, Lincoln's failures. We're all talking, of course, about the 16th President of the United States of America. Abraham Lincoln recovered from those staggering failures, only to be faced with a civil war and a political struggle that saw many in his own party turn their backs on him. Yet he continued to do what he had done so many times in his past. He refused to give up. He would eventually go on to help end slavery in America. This allowed African Americans to finally enjoy the civil and social freedoms they'd been denied. Many historians that talk about such things count Abraham Lincoln as one of the highest achieving presidents in U.S. history. Failure can defeat you, or it can teach you. Prodigious inventor Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times before he successfully invented the incandescent light bulb. He's famous for saying he didn't regard lack of success as a failure. He simply learned 1,000 different ways that wouldn't work. Abraham Lincoln no doubt had the same approach. His perseverance to reach the highest role of leadership in the United States was partly responsible for his eventual attainment of that title. He also learned from his failures. He embraced them as teachers instead of despising them for creating so much hardship in his life. Successful leaders don't give up. They persevere in the face of failure. They also learn from their failures and embrace them as teachers instead of declarations of who they are. A failure is just an event, nothing more. It's up to you whether to learn from it and move forward with better information, or you bow down to your failure and give up. How Jeff Bezos went from burger flipper to billionaire bookseller. In early 2022, Amazon reached a valuation of $1.7 trillion. The company's founder and leader, Jeff Bezos, began with the idea of selling books online. He started in his garage in 1994, and he now heads the world's largest online retail store. Just how big is Amazon? By the end of 2021, people were spending more money at Amazon than Walmart. That's impressive in part because Walmart has more than 11,000 physical retail stores around the world. They also own a thriving online business. The bookseller turned billionaire was a grill man at a McDonald's location in his 20s. He has talked about how things didn't go as smoothly the summer he worked at the Golden Arches. He once had to clean up a fast food nightmare when a ketchup dispenser went crazy, depositing ketchup into, in his own words, every hard-to-reach kitchen crevice. How does a burger-flipping mop man in a fast food joint go from starting a tiny company out of his garage to a billionaire that's changed the way the world shops? He did it by learning valuable leadership lessons. One of those lessons was to maintain a view of the larger picture. Bezos and Amazon succeeded where other companies failed. Remember the dot-com boom, also known as the internet bubble or the tech bubble? It began in 1995. This was a period of time when the internet was growing exponentially in popularity and use. Startup companies popped up everywhere, each one claiming to be the next big thing online. Massive speculation on these internet-related companies led to huge growth, followed by a crash in October of 2002. Companies like WorldCom and Pets.com enjoyed incredible gains, but eventually failed and were shut down. Amazon was in its infancy when the bubble began. By the time the crash was over, the company had lost much of its market capitalization. That would have been a signal to many people that running a retail store online wasn't going to work out very well. But Bezos never lost sight of the larger picture. He and his company succeeded where so many other similar organizations failed because he had a vision and he stuck to it. Great leaders don't take their eyes off the prize. They don't pursue it haphazardly either. They develop a game plan and understand they may have to swivel and maneuver along the way to their goal. In the face of adversity and success, they remain focused on the bigger picture. They don't let short-term hardship or success change their focus. You know what you want for your future. Develop a plan to get there. Then get on the path. Start moving forward. When life tries to knock you off your path, and it inevitably will, keep focused on your bigger picture. You may not create a burger flipper to billionaire story, but you'll be more likely to achieve your big, important goals. Steve Jobs gives you permission to be different. Steve Jobs was notoriously hard on his staff. It's well known that he could be difficult to work for. He was also extremely good at running Apple Inc., which he co-founded with Steve Wozniak. The two young men began business together in 1976. They worked out of Jobs' garage. What would eventually become a hugely successful computer and cell phone manufacturing company started out with very little money. Wozniak sold a programmable calculator, and Steve Jobs sold his Volkswagen minibus for startup capital. Jobs then went to work finding financial backers. Just 1 year later, the Apple II made its debut. Success was almost immediate, due to perfect timing on the back of an explosion in popularity of personal computers. Apple Inc. had an initial public offering in 1981 that broke records. Just 2 years later, Apple joined the Fortune 500 list of the top companies in America. It was the quickest any company had ever gone from IPO to inclusion on that exclusive list. The first trillion-dollar company. In 2018, Apple became the first company in the world to boast a market capitalization of $1 trillion. It took just over 2 more years for the Jobs-Wozniak creation to hit a $2 trillion market cap. That was another record-breaking cap number. What can we learn from this man who was identified as quirky, personable, a great thinker, weird, and sometimes incredibly unlikable? Let's take a look at one of his famous quotes for that answer. Don't be afraid to be different. Steve Jobs frequently said that it's the crazy people that change the world. He surrounded himself with people that had different ideas about how to get things done. He understood that a lot of people saw him as weird and downright different. He so believed in this idea that he used it in Apple's Think Different advertising campaign. The many times he was interviewed on the subject, Jobs said people shouldn't make an effort to be different. But if they are different than most people, that's okay. In other words, he didn't want people to be anything other than what they were as individuals. His belief was that if you're different from most people, embrace that. In many cases, it's a sign you have something new and innovative to bring to the table. Jobs was worth $1 million when he was 23. Just 2 years later, his personal net worth was $100 million. While that's impressive, he said he never did anything for the money and instead loved what he was doing. He was just being himself. That's what mattered to him. Had he bowed to conformity, his incredible ideas and creations may never have seen the light of day. Don't worry if you're different. That might just be the best thing for you and for the world. Successful leaders always have hope. Have you ever heard someone complain that a successful person was just lucky? You may have said this yourself. It appears that certain individuals can't help but succeed. They don't appear to be putting forth much effort. These people stumble from success to success, and it can be frustrating for those of us who struggle to achieve our goals and realize our dreams. Sometimes timing is important. If you bought $10 worth of Bitcoin in 2010, your perfect timing would have made you a millionaire almost 3 times over by the end of 2021. Of course, successful leaders, businessmen, and entrepreneurs sometimes have incredible talent. They find the going easy in life because they were blessed with certain abilities. We all know people like this, either personally or by watching them on our televisions. They effortlessly perform at a very high level, and this can make us envious. Eventually, though, talent, timing, and luck can only get you so far in life. Successful leaders know this. They understand very well that things are going to go against them once in a while. Sometimes it's going to look like the deck of life is stacked against them. Hardship comes calling, and they don't have the necessary skills or talent to move on. Depend on nothing but lady luck, and bad luck will eventually be your undoing. The most successful investors will tell you that timing things right every time is an absolute impossibility. For these and other reasons, great leaders learn to have unfailing hope. Tortured POW John McCain never gave up hope. Hope is a ground floor component of resilience and determination. Sustaining relentless persistence in the face of daily adversity is impossible without a hopeful dream. This can never be represented better than in the Vietnam War experience of former politician John McCain. McCain was a naval officer when he was captured by North Vietnamese soldiers in 1967. He was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years and was often tortured several times a day. He was kept in a small enclosure which didn't allow much room for movement. His terrible treatment at the hands of his captors meant even after his release, he would never be able to raise his arms above his head again. In the face of this unbelievable reality, he says he never gave up hope. He planted a very different reality in his mind. He gave himself hope by visualizing an amazing, fulfilling life one day in the future. He painted a very clear picture of how wonderful his life would be when he was released. When he was finally freed, he launched a successful political career. McCain went on to serve 2 terms in the United States House of Representatives and 5 terms as a state senator in Arizona. His leadership abilities were such that he was nominated as the Republican representative for the presidential election in 2008. His leadership skills as a naval officer and politician are well known. He says none of his success as a leader would have been possible without rock-solid hope. Bad things are going to happen to you. That's a sad reality of the human condition. You're also going to have wonderfully rewarding and fulfilling experiences. In the face of failure or success, never lose hope. No one can take hope from you unless you let them. Life can't steal hope and faith in a wonderful reality unless you allow it to. Never give up hope, regardless of your past or current situation. This is a powerful lesson John McCain and many other successful leaders can teach us. It can give you the resilience and determination to move past any hardship you face.